So there is a new bill that was recently now officially approved inside of the House if you are watching this on release date over the last 24 hours. So this is relatively recent news, and obviously because it was approved in the House and they're going to be working on it, it is still going to be relatively relevant over the next couple of days, maybe even 1 to 2 weeks. But the big idea is that I think it's also really important to notice that the new bill that was just approved inside of the House is not necessarily about doing more fourth stimulus checks. We do have some brand new fresh updates when it comes to the world of doing fourth stimulus checks that I really want to share. However, I do think that at the end of the day, this bill is still relatively important to just know, because it just basically shows that when they are not necessarily working on fourth stimulus checks, although they are, but I mean, like, you know, during the downtime when they're not, what are they actually physically working on? So in today's update, I really just want to talk about half of this update, really talking about what's been happening in the world of fourth stimulus, but also want to do maybe an update to talk about what's been happening in the world, just in general about the news, so we can kind of get a sense idea of what actually is physically happening inside of Congress, even beyond checks. And because at the end of the day, I think it's also just relatively important so that you can kind of have a little bit of a sense of what's going on in our country, because a lot of this stuff can very, very, very much potentially impact our lives in ways even beyond fourth stimulus. So hey everyone, how's it going today, and welcome back to another update. So hopefully we're gonna get right to it, but as always, real fast before we begin, remember to smash the like button if you guys hopefully enjoy videos like this. If you guys want to, consider subscribing and hitting the bell, or you can watch to the end to decide. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, maybe personal thoughts by the end of this video about what you think, or honestly really just anything as always. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So to maybe start with just talking about the general news, of course we will get to fourth stimulus in just a little bit. The big idea is that the House has recently just approved now a brand new bill called the Right to Contraception Act. And while this is not necessarily related to stimulus, I think it's still relatively important to share. Essentially, the background story is that this bill was recently just approved, if you're watching this on release date, in the last 24 hours, at a vote of 228 to 195, and now is currently on the road to the Senate. And the big idea about why this is relatively important, because it was actually relatively breaking news. If you guys remember, not that long ago on the news, there was a situation that happened with the Roe and Wade case in order to try to, you know, be able to give people the option for things related to, again, birth control. So this bill is hoping to try to fight it once again. Now, inside of the Senate, we don't know what's actually going to happen, especially because right now at this time, the Senate is really, really closely divided in terms of the number of Democrats, again, objectively speaking, and Republicans. So because of that reason, we don't know. It's a little bit harder to gauge this time what's actually going to happen. But I think the good news is, or just the general news, again, because this obviously depends on your particular view, again, feel free to comment. But the general news is that it's just a very, very difficult to predict result, what's going to happen really going forward from here. Of course, all of this stuff, we have to really just hopefully see in another future update. Now, when it comes to maybe taking a little bit of a shift from talking about Congress to now talking about President Biden, because he also is one of the biggest figures that has to potentially approve, if we are to potentially approve of some kind of fourth stimulus check. The story with what's happening with Biden right now is that the first off is that he did recently just test positive for the pandemic. However, it does seem like he's doing okay. He did make an announcement on social media that he's recovering from it, and the probability, or what it looks like right now, is that he's probably just going to come back and go back to work. And I figured at the end of the day, it's just kind of important to kind of, you know what's happening with one of the most important people inside of our country, again, regardless of personal opinion about him, but just to know objectively what's happening there. Now, a couple things that are also happening, and this is the part that kind of might start to shift to a little bit about fourth stimulus, which is what this whole thing is about, is really about what he's going to be working on. So there are several things that he's currently going to be working on right now going forward from here. The first thing is about everything related to climate change. The big idea is that he's really debating right now if he wants to declare a state of emergency related to climate change because of a lot of the stuff that's happening in our country. Because we are much more of just a general econ news finance channel, we won't talk as much about it, but it is relatively important to share because one of the reasons why is that beyond the climate change related stuff, there is also a lot of stuff that's happening right now on a very, very international level. Obviously, as we've been talking about for a while now with the Ukraine-Russia situation, but also a lot more about how other countries are doing economically. You may or may not have heard about what's been going on outside, but the big idea is that while it is sadly true that the US is obviously going through a lot of stuff right now, a lot of difficult stuff right now economically, one of the big things that's also important to notice, as some of you guys may or may not know, is that there's a lot of other foreign countries that are actually potentially even worse, actually. So in other words, we're kind of in a situation where we're not necessarily doing so well, but we're kind of the best of the not so good. Basically, it's that we're not doing as well, but there's a lot of other countries that are doing even or going through even more difficulties than us. So why is this actually related? Is that because right now there are a lot of plans that President Biden has to deal with a lot of foreign affairs or international stuff related to that. One of this involves sending money potentially to a lot of foreign countries to help out. There's a lot of talks that he might be trying to send some money to support the G7. All this is really is just, it's essentially just about bringing money to support international affairs and specifically the important countries that we kind of ally or work with around the world. So this is just something that is going to be relatively important to stimulus because the reason why is that the more money that they put over here, the less money they can spend on other stuff, whether this is related to just fourth stimulus or even just a lot of just plans for our country. You know, everything related to things such as like our taxes, building better roads, education, other social programs, our lifestyle, funding, infrastructure, all of this stuff really just goes on and on. But of course, to maybe finally move into the core of what most of us really care about is really going to be everything now talking about the fourth stimulus check / package. Now, when it comes to the world of the fourth stimulus check and package, the big idea right now is that one of the biggest goals that they're really working on right now is to try to revive the fourth stimulus package. There is no official name right now. As some of you guys know is that it's basically a revival version of the Build Back Better plan. They don't have an official name. A lot of this stuff is to be determined, but they are trying to potentially revive it. And there is also a relative sense of time urgency because in order to try to really get it through, they have to try to approve it or certainly, really press for it before the elections. Because if there is some shift of power in the elections and it doesn't look like it's going to be in their favor right now, then it's going to make it even more difficult. So if they are already going through difficulties now, we can only imagine what's going to happen when the power shifts even greater. So now at this current time, the big idea is that they want to try their best to revive the fourth stimulus package before all of this stuff happens. Now, there is some good news and there's some not so good news. The not so good news is that inside of this new fourth package, there probably will not be general fourth stimulus check. So the traditional first, second, third, fourth stimulus check that we're used to. However, the probability is that there's probably going to be a lot of plans that talk about reallocating cash or money. They're not trying to print any more money. I think that's one of the most important things. But there are a lot of plans about trying to take the money they currently already have and try to redirect it to spend it on other kinds of programs. I do know is that the child tax credit is definitely still on there. So it definitely kind of acts as a fourth stimulus check, but of course only for families, sadly, not for single individuals. I'm a single individual, so I feel it right there. Shout out to everyone that's in that particular shoe. Of course, it is obviously a lot more expensive to get through if you are a family because now you have an extra body or person to feed. So it kind of really goes both ways. But when it comes to the world of the fourth stimulus check, the big idea is that there are a lot of plans right now that they may, however, try to provide money for a lot of specific states, and even more specifically to not just provide money for individual states, but to try to encourage them to maybe now use that money to do fourth stimulus checks or whatever kind of program that they believe can help their people the most, or just whatever they particularly believe in. We are already seeing, as most of you guys know, in a lot of other states like California, Maine, there's a couple other ones, but those are just the most recent ones, where they did just officially approve the fourth stimulus check. We did make videos already about it. I'll put it at the end screen on the bottom if you guys haven't checked it out. It just talks about a couple states that have it. But the big idea is that it's anticipated that as the inflation situation starts to go up, there may be a lot of other states that start to come out in order to try to do their own program as well. And again, because we're already starting to see it, it's just more about seeing what even more states are just doing. Hopefully more checks can come out for them as well. But the big idea is that beyond this is that that's pretty much what I really just wanted to share in today's update. So as always, if you guys hopefully found that relatively insightful, I know it was a little bit of hopefully a balance so we can get some stimulus news, but also some just general news about our country. And because again, we only have 24 hours in a day, so everything kind of overlaps. The less time they spend on a certain something, the more they can spend on another something. And it kind of goes both ways. So that being said, if you guys made it to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well. If you're watching on release, have a great weekend. And as always, remember to smash the like button, or you guys again can consider. But again, it's just always greatly appreciated. Subscribe, and hopefully hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.